What up, y'all? It's your man Abuamerican. Hey, you know what? I made a video for Facebook. We did a little Facebook live video, and I just wanted to drop this information off here. This is basically about like black heroism and benevolence, and I think we have a problem with this in the West. What happened was this: I post a lot of guns and knives and swords and all sorts of stuff on my Facebook, and people were freaking out, sending messages to me, my ex-wife, whatever else, asking me about it. You know, and I had to wonder what was the problem. And only one black person wrote me. It was a woman. The rest were white people, which made me realize that this is a race issue. Now these are people who are friends. I grew up with some of them. Some of them I don't know too well, like that. But you know, it was very telling that only white people were writing me about this. So what brought me to this conclusion about race, heroism, benevolence, and black people was the whole Luke Cage fallout. Now, Luke Cage is I think it's a Marvel series universe hero. He's a black heroic protagonist, big dude, and he portrays himself as a black hero in a black neighborhood saving black people, and actually from white people. Who are bringing drugs and weapons into the community. Although one of the gun runners in the series apparently was a black guy. Nonetheless, the biggest bad guys were white guys. And I think that scares people. People freaked out about it. White people were like, we don't feel comfortable with this show. And you have to wonder why. Why? Because over the years, the media has not portrayed black people as heroic, benevolent people. Superman, Iron Man, you got a few black heroes, of course, but really the vast majority of heroes are white people saving, white women from bad guys, usually bad guys with brown skin, out yelling Allahu Akbar or, speaking in some funky language, freaking whatever that lady's name is, Jane or whatever it is. She had to go all the way to Africa to be captured by King Kong, the big black King Kong. It's just, and the entire media has for the longest time portrayed us as like the drug dealers, the rapists, and this and that and whatever. Even though drug dealing would probably be more closer to the truth. Raping white women is like it happens, but really that was a death sentence for most black people over time. But that's just like it's something that's been sold to the people in general, and this makes sense because I say it all the time. If you live in the West, you live in a white patriarchy. So of course the standard of heroism and beauty and whatever else is going to be what? White people. Makes sense. If you go to Africa, in Nigeria, whatever else, or whatever other country, usually the standard for beauty or heroism is their people. Look at Indian movies, those Bollywood movies where the guy's throwing people over out of cars and doing all this crazy stuff and flying around and just doing madness stuff. It's Indian guys saving Indian women in an environment of India. That's an Indian, it's not really a patriarchy. Those Indians don't really have a patriarchy, but you get the idea that they create their own heroes and their own imagery. Black people don't really have that in the West. So if you're looking at like a benevolent black guy, if you can perceive large black males as benevolent, which usually they can't, which I think is why the police are so freaked out by black people and shoot them and kill them. And when you look at like how a lot of white guys get away with like significantly worse things and survive and end up in jail and on trial, you have to wonder why. It's the imagery, and it plays a very big role. So anyway, going back to the guns on my Facebook, I think the discomfort that the people have with the idea of me like showing guns and, being a gun owner and weapons and all this stuff, it makes them uncomfortable because in their mind, they have a difficult time putting together the idea of a benevolent black person with weapons, a big, strong, benevolent black guy. They can't reconcile this in their mind, because what is the imagery on television? We're always up to no good. So in their mind, I'm just assuming here, I might be wrong, but they're like, oh, he has to have ulterior motives. Why does he need weapons otherwise? But if I was a white guy who wasn't Muslim and I was posting all this stuff, nobody would really care. Nobody would even blink twice. Because you know what? I'm just sharing stuff from white guys. These aren't black guys posting these weapons. I don't go out and take these pictures and own these weapons and then share them. No, I'm sharing them from other people because it's sort of like a wish list in a sense, like, oh man, I wish I had that. That's beautiful. Or it's like, sharing cars or whatever else. I do that too, but nobody's asked me about that. Why? Because I think in general, people fear the imagery of a black male with like some sort of power. And it comes, and like I said, I don't want to make this into a race issue because you guys know I'm not big on race, but it's just like when people say, oh, well, look at Martin Luther King. Why Martin Luther King? Why not Malcolm X? Martin Luther King only preached peace. You're comfortable with that. Black people who only want peace. Yeah, Martin Luther King. Okay, but we had guys who were hostile and violent and were all about like taking care of themselves and their people. What's wrong with those guys? By any and all means necessary, Malcolm X. He wasn't really a bad guy. But he didn't believe in taking crap off anyone, just like most people shouldn't. Why don't white people say, well, Malcolm X said? No, they always say Martin Luther King, because you're comfortable with a soft black guy. You're not really comfortable with the strong, empowered black guy who can fight or has guns or whatever else, who takes care of himself and is a big muscular guy and got money. That scares you. And in that sense, I believe people are scared of the concept of me, a 6'2", over 200-pound black guy who can fight, walking around carrying guns or knives or something. That scares people because you're not used to the concept of heroic, benevolent black people. I don't like bringing up the race card, but we can't deny it doesn't exist. We can't say it doesn't exist. We can't. It obviously does. If it doesn't exist to you is one thing, but we can't deny that it's present in our society, and the overall imagery that black people are portrayed with isn't good. And I'm not blaming everything on white people. Black people, we don't help ourselves. If you're black and you're watching this, we don't help ourselves. We got a lot of people in jail. We got a lot of criminals. We got a lot of people who do dumb stuff. World Star. People, who doesn't know World Star? And what's it in association with? Dysfunctional black behavior, from the, marriage rates and the crime rates and all these other things we got going on. We don't help with the imagery on our own. That adds on top of what the media is already doing. So, I don't know. That's just my take on the whole thing with like this. Because, if you're on Facebook with me, then you got to understand that, that I post like 10s, 15s, 20 images of guns every day, swords, knives, whatever else, Sometimes we have some really lively conversations on it, with like some of my friends who are, also gun owners, prior military, almost all of them, and I don't know, some people it makes uncomfortable, obviously. But why? If you spent any time on my Facebook, you would know you don't have to be uncomfortable. So then that means you're suspicious of my intentions or motivations behind having a weapon. Which, let me come into that now real quick. Better to have a gun and not need it than to need a gun and not have it. We are in a time when savages are pretending to be civilized. And if you don't believe me, go look at the Rohingya Muslims and what they're dealing with. If you don't believe me, go look what U.S. police are doing to people who are selling loose cigarettes and how society treats people who went around killing a kid who has Arizona iced tea and Skittles. How a 9-year-old was playing with a plastic gun in a park and the police pulled up and shot him in under 6 seconds. Not a word was spoken to him. I don't care what you think of Trayvon Martin in his past or whatever else. People, the police, our individual society, not judge, jury, and executioner. You don't have that right. There is due process, and it is to be followed. If it's not to be followed, then we have anarchy and chaos. And do we live in an anarchic society with absolute chaos, where everybody can just do whatever they want and everyone's responsible, like I said, with true freedom for their own safety and responsibility? Because if it's like that, then someone should put the word out so people know to protect themselves from just anybody who shows up in a magic suit with a badge and a gun, that he knows that, it's game on right now. And, maybe I should whip out my gun and protect myself. But we know it's not supposed to be like that. Yet and still, how many people, speeding, misdemeanor charges where you should be issued a ticket and just allowed to go on your way, how many black people have died in America because of this? Obviously, there's a problem. So, it's better to be the sheepdog than the sheep. Because when the wolves come and you don't have your gun, who do you want to be the victim? Guns are civilization. A gun is the great equalizer. A gun puts an 80-pound woman on par with a 250-pound man who's like 9% body fat. It balances the game. It makes everything, it levels the playing field. An armed society is a polite one. I don't know. I prefer to be the sheepdog or a wolf, but I'd never want to be a sheep. And I'm not even trying to be the wolf, because that's the one that preys on the weak. I mean, that's his job, of course. But what I'm saying is, I'm not going to join the ranks of the criminals. But if you give me the option of being the sheepdog or the sheep or the wolf, what are you going to pick? Be the wolf, the sheep, or the sheepdog? The average person who has some sort of self pride and whatever else about himself, and social responsibility, he's going to say, I want to be a sheepdog, the protectors and maintainers of societies. But if you're given the option, wolf or sheep, you going to tell me you want to be a sheep? Just between the jaws of the wolves and the herd? I don't know. Whatever. Put it how you want to. Anyway, it's just some thoughts I was having about this, and I wanted to share it with you guys. This is your man, Abuamerican. Catch my Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all at Abuamerican. I'm out.